assessment task 1 for a BSBCRT511. So this assessment task is the knowledge questions, and I'm going to take you through each question and just give you a bit of a tip on what you need to do for that question there. So the first question is just looking at the different characteristics for the critical thinking concepts. So this needs to be in your own words and how it can be reflected in the workplace. Now it says here each response must be 50 words or more. That's a bit of a guide and it just gives you an idea on the amount of wording required. So in this question, we have clarity and accuracy. The characteristics is what you need to list, and you will be able to find them in the learning materials. And then you can put how the concept is reflected in a workplace task. So for that, you can either describe it, or an easy way is describe it and then give an example. This might be an example that you've come across before, or it may be one you can think of where it would apply. So question 2, we're looking at different critical thinking approaches. And again, we're looking at the different characteristics. So identify at least one for each approach. And then in your own words again, describe how it's reflected in a workplace task. So you might give an example of a task and then explain how that critical thinking approach is used. So analysis, you would find the characteristic and then explain how that would be used in a task. And this is just so that you can show that you not only understand it or can find the information in the learning materials, but you understand it in a workplace context. So question 3, we're going to be using bounce fitness as an example. For this one, we're going to be looking at the business objectives and KPIs, and we're going to outline 9 business objectives from the document that you access. So you need to click on the link to access the document, and then outline means either a description or some point form, not just one word. That's all actually pretty clear in the document there, so you shouldn't have any trouble. And that just gives you an idea of the objectives for the business overall, which is really helpful for anything that you're doing or any project. Question 4, we're going to be looking at another document, the communication practices. And once you have a look in that, you're going to identify 3 different communication processes and then how that is conducted in the workplace. So again, we're looking at what the process is and how that relates to the actual workplace. And you can give examples for that as well, if that's an easier way for you to explain it. So question 5, we're looking at an on-the-job training plan, and we're going to be looking at how people in Bounce Fitness learn on the job and what their training plans are like. So have a look at that document and then answer the 3 questions here. Outline the 3 reasons why the task must be presented by the trainer to the trainee. So that could be A, B, and C, or 1, 2, and 3. So find 3 of them. And again, outline is a brief description or a summary. Outline the 5 reasons the trainer must try out the trainer's performance. So that's the same as the first one, and outline the 4 reasons why the trainer does a follow-up. So you'll find the reasons within that document. You need to break that document down and then provide an outline as to why these things are in there. So for question number 6, we have another document that we need to access, which is the personal development procedure. And we're just, in your own words, we're describing the appeals process. So this could be the process is first we do this, then we do that, then we do that. And then you're going to be looking at the training courses available for personal and management skills. So again, your own words means not copy and paste from the document. And then again, we are looking at how employees can participate in external course of study, because there will be different procedures for external and internal study options. Question 7, we're going to describe the characteristics of each learning environment listed. This is where, again, refer back to the learning materials, the modules, and have a look in there. So the learning environment in classroom learning or distance learning, what are the different characteristics? And you're going to describe that. So not just list a one-word answer, you're going to give a bit of a description. In question 8, we are looking at the learning environment. So we're going to look at the learning systems and then a description of the learning systems. So classroom learning and again in distance learning. So remember, a description is a couple of sentences that just describe what that characteristic is. Then we're going to start looking into some of the legislation. First up is the Privacy Act. Now, we have the Customer Relationship Management Policy and Procedures here for Bounce Fitness, and it relates to the Privacy Act. So this one is also used as an example. You will need to find other legislation in the next question or in the next part. So the Privacy Act 1998, and you're going to look at the different provisions, and then how is it relevant to the policies and procedures of Bounce Fitness. Then we're going to look at the staff recruitment policy, identify the legislation. So we had the Privacy Act before. Now we're going to identify which legislation we need to, that relates to the staff recruitment policy. And then we're going to describe how Bounce Fitness abides by that legislation. So find 2 ways that Bounce Fitness abides by that legislation, and you'll find that in the staff recruitment policy, and you can do a little summary of that. Question 11, we're looking at the market research procedures. All right, so we're going to identify at least one source that can provide additional information related to the market research procedures that you access here, and we're going to record that source of information. We have the criteria and the characteristics of the criteria here. So you've got all that sitting there ready as a reference. Now we're going to put the title of the source, what the source is, and then we're going to explain the different criteria. Now this is where your critical thinking skills come in. So we're looking at accuracy, authority, audience, relevance, and likelihood of bias. So if we go back to here, you have a description, the characteristics of each of those here, and you can use that to provide an explanation on that source that you're using. Question 12 is Bounce Fitness again, and we're going to look at the emergency evacuation procedures. And again, we have the characteristics here as a guide, and we're going to put the title of the document, or the title, the source, where you've sourced it from, and an explanation of all of these again. So you're looking at the accuracy, authority, audience, so who is the audience, the relevance, how relevant that is to everything, and the likelihood of bias. So a bit of an explanation there as to how all of those things relate. Now, this one, question 13, is going to be based on your own workplace or industry or your own job role. And this little section here is just for the assessor to give some context to your responses. So who is the workplace? What industry? And industry best practice to instructing personnel. So just a little bit of a description that tells us about the workplace. So it gives us context for the question 13. So question 13 is we're going to complete the table at least one workplace task in your industry that uses each method below. So this is having a think about your critical and creative thinking and how it applies in your job role. And this gives you context in your real life. And at least one way of applying the identified industry best practice. Again, if you need to have a look at more of what these things are, have a look in the learning modules and you'll be able to find some information there. So critical thinking, the method we're looking at is scaffolding. So which workplace task would you perform? Give us a bit of a description of the task and that scaffolding relates to, and then the application of the industry best practice using that method. And creative thinking, we're looking at brainstorming. So how does that relate? How can you use brainstorming within a workplace task? So question 14, we're nearly at the end. There's only 15 questions. You're going to complete this table here, and we're looking at the critical thinking skills and the creative thinking skills. So for critical thinking skills, identify at least one team building activity that will promote the development of the critical thinking skills. And this is, in your own words again, explain how a team building activity that you've identified can actually promote critical thinking. So list the activity here, maybe a bit of a description, and then how does that activity work with the team's critical thinking skills? So problem solving is the first one, and then considering alternatives, so looking at alternatives. And part B, we're looking at the creative thinking. So team building activity for creative thinking and how that promotes creative thinking within the team. And then brainstorming for solutions. How does that promote what's an activity you can do and how does that promote the creative thinking within the team? And question 15, which is the last question in this assessment task. And you're going to complete the table about the critical thinking and creative thinking skills. So in your own words for part A, we're looking at critical thinking. And we're going to explain at least one action that you can do in the workplace that will help employees develop the skills listed. And in your own words for part B, for the creative thinking, we're going to look at least one action you can do in the workplace that will help your employee develop each listed creative thinking skills below. So again, a guide, 50 words or more, and that just means you're going to need probably at least a few sentences, if not a paragraph. So here we have, for critical thinking, we're looking at research and avoiding assumptions, which is a really important thing when we're looking at avoiding bias as well. So what's an action in the workplace that will help develop each critical thinking skill? And then we look with creative thinking, we're looking at imagining possibilities and open-mindedness. So what's an action in the workplace that will develop each of those skills? And that is the end of task 1.